on this episode of Clear the Air.
Like someone with different lineage and different genetics are going to metabolize food differently. They're going to have a different microbiome, and we can't get down into the weeds on that. And so they say, all right, just seal all the teeth. That's something we can do across the board.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not the healthiest person, but I do understand that I do need to get up in the morning and I go down and get on a treadmill for a little while and lift some weights so that I can be buff. I'm not buff, but that's because I was educated about it.
You got dad strength.
Yeah, I got dad strength. I don't know what that means, but
we've done a lot of the school shopping. My boys are really excited about getting their school drip. I think is the word. Their drip. Yeah, your drip. The way you look.
I'm going to use that word today.
Yeah, they got their drip. They got to get the right drip to improve their Riz.
Welcome to our Clear the Air podcast. I'm your host, Nate Jones, and I'm here today with Shad Slaughter.
Hey, everybody.
That's all we get is a hey, everybody. We're in that season. School's going back. I have 2 young kids. I was actually trying to get them to come in here and chat with us in this podcast today, and they decided they would rather go to the water park with their friends than come here and sit with their old man and chat about going back to school. But we're in that season, and schools are in session, and kids are going back to the grind of school.
Yeah, I've got 3 kids going into school. In fact, I have 2 kids in high school this year and a junior high schooler. And it's been pretty fun the last week. They're both sad that summer is ending, and though they don't want to admit it, they're excited to go back and see their friends and go back to kind of the social side of school. I don't know that they're super excited about the academic side of school, but...
Well, my kids are all excited to go back to school strictly for the academics. They don't really like their friend. No, they're actually all excited. My oldest one, Sophia, she's 13. She's in 8th grade. She actually had her very first cheerleading experience yesterday at the game. She cheered for the 4th and 5th graders.
That's awesome.
And after their scrimmage game that lasted 20 minutes, then she cheered for the next upper group for their scrimmage game for 20 minutes, and then she cheered for the other one, and then we took off and left before the high school started. But it's my old high school, she's going to be there, she was really excited about she was insane yesterday.
She's having fun doing it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, no, she wants to keep doing it, and I said, no. But anyways.
My son that's going into his senior year, he and a friend went down and bought kind of a brightly colored striped button-down shirt because they were supposed to get their school pictures, and then they put out on social media that they were going to hide this shirt at a certain spot in the school and that everybody should put this shirt on for their pictures. And so he's had his text blowing up with everybody sending their ID cards wearing this shirt. And so far, they're up to 150 of the boys in the senior class that have put this shirt on for their school pictures. So
that's actually
kind of
hilarious.
A harmless, fun prank there.
That is actually pretty funny.
So
I'm going to tell my kids to do something like that. No, but my daughter went in on Monday, Sophia, to get her school ID, and that's kind of interesting because her school ID is her yearbook picture.
Yeah, that's same with my son.
So they don't go like halfway through the school year and, then take pictures? Didn't they? Well, first of all, when I was in...
We didn't have school IDs, so...
I know, and I didn't even have a yearbook when I was in... Well, I never went to junior high, so...
Yeah.
I guess that... My daughter keeps throwing that in my face. Like, she's like, Dad, you don't know what it's like to go to junior high, so you can't relate.
Yeah. So the kids are excited, they're nervous. What do you think the parents are feeling? What are you feeling?
I'm actually not looking forward to it. I enjoy spending time with my kids. I enjoy going to the lake and hanging out with them. And, when they start going back to school, it puts a lot of restrictions on being able to travel and go do things. Cause, you got school, and then you got dance, and then you got piano lessons, and pretty soon your whole week is shot.
I think you're right. I mean, I think a lot of parents joke around about feeling relieved that the kids are going back to school, but it does change the dynamic of the family.
Maybe for a week.
Yeah.
So, anyways. But I'll bet that's true. But with the start of a new school year, I'd like to poke around the news and see what people are saying about our children's health.
Have you found anything interesting?
Well, there's lots of stuff on there. Most of it has to do with like mental health stuff. The CDC webpage there's been a big push for mental health. Not as much of a push for oral health or nasal health or hygiene in general. It's mostly just about mental health.
That's interesting.
Which is important.
I thought about this not too long ago. I was in 3rd grade when the space shuttle blew up, the Challenger. Was it the Challenger?
Yeah.
That took the teacher. It was a big deal because there was a teacher on that. And I was in English, and we were sitting in class, and they wheeled in a TV, and they showed it, and on live television, it blew up. And then they turned the TV off, and they wheeled it out, and they started teaching class. There was no, like...
Wait, you had a TV in your classroom?
Well, no, they had to wheel it in and out. But there was no, like...
But
there was no, like, grievance time or counseling or whatever. So, like, oh, I guess they all died. Let's go on to teaching English. And so it is interesting that there's a lot more focus now on kind of mental health than maybe when I was growing up.
Hopefully it's not too soon. But when that happened, I was living in Mexico City. And by the time I got to school, they were already making jokes about it, which that was way too soon.
Yeah.
But they were already making jokes about it. And so the way I learned about that was by someone telling a joke. And I'm like, what does that mean? What is that? Because I didn't get the joke because I didn't know that it had blown up. So I'm like, what does that mean? And then they're telling me the joke. And I'm like, okay, guys, that's not nice.
That's not nice.
They're like, well, if they're Yankees, it doesn't matter.
So a lot of focus on mental health. What else did you find?
there was a little bit of a focus on dental health. And really it was just the CDC pushing parents to get their kids to get sealants.
What I mean, sealant. I mean, I guess a sealant is putting something over the teeth that protects it from
it's kind of like,
cavities?
well, this is the way the dentist referred to me, told me about it when I had them put on when I was a kid, and I just remember it. But he goes, all they do is in the molars in the back, you have all these cracks and fissures, and that's a great place for bacteria and stuff to get in there where cavities start. And so what they do is they clean it out really good, and then they pour super glue on it.
And it's just in those spots where there's the fissures and the cracks, or do they cover the whole tooth?
Well, it covers, so if I had a piece of paper, I would draw it, but a molar, it's kind of flat on top, but it's kind of concave.
Yeah.
So stuff sits down in there. And so it'll pull it up there and level it up so you don't have those big cracks and fissures, so the food doesn't get stuck down in there and bacteria can't get in there.
And how long do those sealants last? Is that they have to do it like every year, or is that?
I don't know how long they last. I mean, they last a pretty long time because I've never had them put back on. Maybe I need to go to school.
So good thing. I mean, sounds like it's a good thing, right? Like get all these sealants, prevent the kids from getting caries and cavities.
I think they're good because anything you can do to help prevent that. But I do think that it is masking the problem.
How so?
Well, we were chatting earlier, and you had said that you had mentioned to one dentist that something about it, and so I'll let you tell what you said.
Just that I was talking to Dr. Cannon, who we work with a lot, and I had mentioned before he was going up to give the lecture that it seemed like cavities and caries were kind of a canary in the coal mine. They were alerting to a bigger danger, in this case, like an unhealthy microbiome and maybe an unhealthy environment in the mouth, and that if you just treat the cavities and cover up those cavities and not address the main issue, you're really not getting to the core of the problem.
And I agree with that. And that is exactly what dentistry has been doing for the last 100 years. It was 100 years ago this year that we've learned, as the human race, that we learned that caries are an actual bacterial infection of strep mutans in your mouth. But dentists, even to this day, they treat it as a structural issue. Even if you're 100% on board with fluoride, all fluoride does is it helps remineralize your enamel. It doesn't do anything to address the bacterial infection. And so by doing what you said, which is just covering up the issue, that's exactly what sealants do. I think sealants are a good thing because they're going to help, and they're not that invasive, and they're not, there isn't really a downside to them. But I do think that the CDC is missing the boat because they're not talking about actually treating the bacterial infection. It's like if you have a gangrenous thing on your arm, just sitting there and looking at it and saying, well, let's chop my arm off. When you can just treat it.
Right. So, I think it is interesting because affecting the microbiome in the mouth requires effort, right? And it requires some behavioral change or education at least.
Yeah.
And so if you take away and you mask that, then it doesn't create the pressure to do it. But then what we also see is that, especially in certain populations, they have high rates of caries, and then but they don't have the kind of support and education to affect the microbiome. And so they're dealing with the symptom of the problem. And not only are they not fixing the problem, but that symptom of the problem is causing other issues. And so, the sealants allows for maybe those communities or those people that don't have access to or the education on that. But I see your point. Like, why are we not doing sealants and pushing for that education as well?
Absolutely. I think they need to. I think the CDC and the Surgeon General. The Surgeon General is really supposedly America's doctor, so they're really the ones that head up the public health department. The CDC is more of going out and trying and finding ways to mitigate illnesses. So this actually covers both of them, but the Surgeon General should be out there talking about sealants. They should be out there talking about brushing your teeth. They should be out there talking about utilizing xylitol and other options, other things that they can do to change the microbiome in the mouth. Because there's plenty of studies showing that if you change the microbiome away from Strep mutans, acid-creating bacteria, you don't get tooth decay.
So why don't they do that, do you think?
Dude, if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be rich.
You have to do some supposing.
Because I think that they are more concerned about pharmaceuticals than they are about hygiene. I mean, I wrote I had a paper published, I want to say 2 years ago, where I actually talked about how in public health circles and healthcare circles, the word hygiene is a dirty word, ironically. We know that brushing your teeth, hygiene, that taking a shower, hygiene, that washing your hands, washing your nose are all some of the most effective ways to stop the spread of illness.
Right.
But yet, public health doesn't talk about it. They go straight to the pharmaceuticals. They go straight to the antibiotics. They go straight to the vaccines. They go straight to the all these other drugs that are expensive that the government's paying for.
I think as you were saying that, it came to mind. Maybe one of the other issues is you've got kind of this span of qualitative versus quantitative, right? And it's anything that's easy to count, you kind of lend towards approaching that because it's easy to see, you are or you're not, right? And it's like, I remember there's a saying that says that which gets measured gets done, right? And so it's like, okay, we're measuring the rate of cavities in this population. So what's the focus going to be? Reducing cavities. Regardless the means, we're just about getting that number of cavities down. And it's a lot easier to measure the number of cavities that you're keep preventing from happening using sealants than it is to go in and say, okay, are we having a positive effect on the microbiome that's leading to fewer cavities? So sometimes it just comes down to like the metrics you're using.
So how can we come up with a metric that the CDC will, work toward that makes sense? That's actually an interesting.
How easy is it to do saliva testing and then identify the bacteria in the mouth? Is that?
Well, that's all easy, but I think that the issue is that the CDC can come in and say, okay, we put in 1 million sealants. This is going to save us, according to their numbers, This is going to save us $300 million.
Right.
You go in and say, hey, we went out and educated people about not utilizing sugar because it rots your teeth and causes inflammation in your mouth and I know a whole bunch of other diseases. And we talked about utilizing non-6-carbon sugars like xylitol and erythritol to help reduce that inflammation and change that microbiome. Well, one, you can't say, well, we did 1 million of these.
Right.
And so how do you justify that?
I think it comes back to that counting thing, right? It's like we did these sealants. They didn't require the patient to do anything but sit there. They didn't have to change their behavior. They didn't have to do anything different. Whereas if you go and say, we educated on this, they say, and we don't know, we educated 1 million people. We have no idea if they're going to follow it. We have no idea what their behavior is going to be. So it's harder to measure.
And another part of it is government employees, they like easy. I'm just guessing there.
I think we all like easy.
Because where I'm seeing it is that they can go in and say, yeah, we're going to have 1 million sealants, done, over. They got 1 million sealants, it's
Check
done.
the box.
Check the box. Whereas if they go out and do and educate people, you have to sit there and watch them and go back and highlight and I don't want to use the word re-educate, but remind them of those things they need to change their behavior and how it's going to save them money if they stay healthy and don't get sick over and over, because you've got to affect that behavioral change, and that behavioral change isn't something that happens in one day. It happens over time. But over time, I think the government would save more money if they actually did do those educational things and started those trends.
Yeah, if the behavior changes.
Correct. But I think that when it comes to things like healthcare, I think that if you can show people how it's going to affect their pocketbook and their long-term health, and show them easy ways to counteract those things, I think most people would actually do it. I mean, I'm not the healthiest person in the world, but I do understand that I do need to get up in the morning and I go down and get on a treadmill for a little while and lift some weights so that I can be buff. I'm not buff, but that's because I was educated about
dad
it.
strength.
Yeah, I got dad strength. I don't know what that means, but so. But going back to the community health thing, I do think that sealants are good. I think that the CDC is at least doing something good. Right. It does help. I do think they could be more effective if they were out there discussing better hygiene practices, if they had hygienists going into the schools and teaching kids, things like that, having nutritionists go in and teach the children, eat your veggies that aren't really a food group, I learned from somebody. Shad taught me that vegetables aren't really a food group, they're a culinary term.
It's a culinary term. There are fruits, but there aren't vegetables. That's a whole other conversation.
I know. That to me, every time I think about that, I'm just like, so what do you call them? I mean, what are my carrots? What are my
Your
peas
carrots
and
are
corn?
a tuber, right?
I don't know. Carrots aren't tubers. Potatoes are tubers.
Yeah.
How did we get sidetracked from talking
Anyway,
about?
Yeah, we can cut this out.
Don't cut it out. I think it's interesting. Anyways, what do you think that we can do differently other than just doing sealant programs and trying to get our public health agencies to discuss
Well, I think
hygiene?
I think as you were talking about that, it made me realize that when we talk about the microbiome and we talk about health, it looks very different for everyone, right?
Absolutely.
Genetics plays into that, where you live, your environment, all of those things play into that. And so when it comes to health, there really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. But when it comes to public health, you've got to come up with kind of one-size-fits-all solutions. And I think that's where the disconnect and the challenge is, right? Where it's like,
I don't know.
The behavioral differences, like someone with with different lineage and different genetics are going to metabolize food differently. They're going to have a different microbiome, and we can't get down into the weeds on that. And so they say, all right, just seal all the teeth. That's something we can do across the board.
Yeah, that's true. I do think that education, I mean, there is things that systemically, and when I say systemically, I mean in our culture, that I think that the Surgeon General and the CDC could have influence on. I mean, the pervasiveness of sugar in our food supply is something that I think needs to be addressed, and I think it needs to be addressed rather quickly. I think if we wait another 10, 15 years, we're all going to be too fat to do any research.
It is interesting that there's so much attention paid to almost every other ingredient that's ingested out there except for kind of a blind eye to sugar.
That's really interesting because, as you know, we've discussed it on this podcast, and it's like every couple of months another article comes out about how some other sweetener isn't good for us, and it gets a lot of media play. But when was the last time you saw an article that came out? Because there's thousands of articles out there that talk about how bad sugar is for us. But when was the last time you saw any of those get any media play?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
We have sugar and just the pervasive, and sugar is in a lot more stuff than people I think even recognize, right? Like I'll
It's
go
in
to
your
the store and I'll
spaghetti
be
sauce.
like,
It's in your
oh,
ketchup.
I'm gonna get something savory and I'm gonna buy some beef jerky, and I look at the back and it's like just loaded with sugar.
You're buying the wrong beef jerky.
But then the other piece of that then is not only is the sugar an issue, but the way we eat is very different than we were evolved to eat. And now instead of eating, I look back historically, humans were eating really like once or twice a day. And now we're eating all day long. And we're washing it down with, sugary sodas. And so we don't really give
How much sugar is in Mountain Dew?
a lot.
Oh,
I don't know. More than is in water.
it's true.
And so we don't really give our mouths a chance to like protect themselves, right? And so like every time you eat, the pH level in your mouth goes down. And before your saliva because that's what the saliva does, is it comes in, is it neutralizes the pH in your mouth and gives your mouth a chance against those bacteria. But before we get the pH back to a neutral standpoint, we eat again.
Eat again.
And we eat again and we eat again. And so we're always in this constant state of acidity. And so I think that what's important, though, and when you look at public health, is that you don't necessarily say, well, our bodies were evolved to do this, our behavior is this, and so we're just going to like cap the solution instead of addressing it. Because there are things that we can do to say, okay, the behavior now is snacking, but are there things that we can do to neutralize the acids in our mouth and basically simulate that saliva effect and help those bacteria? So
Yeah,
I think there's things that we can do
I know. We can eat baking soda all day.
besides eating baking soda.
Oh,
I mean, they're doing it. I mean, they're doing it in Finland, right?
yeah.
Like,
no, they
xylitol is a key to that.
they hand out xylitol gum in the schools.
Right.
You change that microbiome.
Yeah.
We've had that. We've already discussed that on this podcast.
I think it's worth coming back to.
Well, then we'll come back to it. But so my advice to parents. I mean, this is something that I do with my kids. I actually send them to school with enough gum and candy, xylitol, for their whole class for the whole year. That way, their teacher can't ever say, "Did you bring enough for everybody?"
Yes, I
they
did.
And so so my kids like it because they get it. But now everybody comes and hassles them because they want more gum. And my daughters are saying, well, go buy it. I'm not your gum supplier.
Dad's not sending me through college by me giving this away to you.
I know. I think the other thing that people can do is we've talked about it too, and is obviously very closely related to your oral health is your nasal health. And if your kids aren't sleeping right and if they're not breathing through their nose, then chances are they're going to have more acid in their mouth also.
It's interesting you say that because, we talked earlier about counseling and behavioral and stuff like that. And I remember listening to a doctor once talking about those kids that struggle sitting still in class and the ones that are and the perception is that they have too much energy, but the opposite is actually true.
Yeah.
That the fidgeting and the moving around is the body's reaction to try and stay awake. And those kids are not getting an adequate amount of sleep. And that could be maybe because they're not getting the 8 to 9 hours. I think it's 9 hours it's recommended for elementary age, 9 to 10 hours for elementary age kids.
I let mine have 6 and that's it.
So they're not getting the sleep that they need. And then when they are sleeping, they're not actually getting the type of sleep that they need.
Yeah, there's actually a bunch of papers out there on that topic, and you have all these sleep medicine groups that are out there now, really bringing that concept, to the front. But it has to do with inflammation in the airway. You go back. I mean, people have CPAP machines now. Oh my gosh, how many people have CPAP machines? And 20 years ago,
Right.
we all would have been dead because,
You have to have the CPAP
CPAPs.
machine.
What's changing? I mean, how did we survive for 1,000,000 years without a CPAP machine?
Right.
I can't imagine that Benjamin Franklin didn't have someone there while he was taking a nap with bellows.
And you can,
We're-
it's to the point where they wear them so tight that you have the lines that are
Yeah.
grooved into the skin.
But using a CPAP machine is exactly the same concept as using a sealant. You're masking what the problem really is, and what the problem really is a bad diet and not enough exercise. And you've really got to open up that airway. And the kids,
So how is diet and exercise affecting the airway?
because when you have more fat, it blocks your airway, and exercise, you're not as fat.
And
it also affects the way your posture when you're sleeping, because people that are larger, they sleep with their head bent back like that, which actually closes the airway. If you sleep with your head tilted down like that, then it helps open up your airway.
I've also heard a strong connection between sugar and inflammation.
Yes.
And so that side of the diet, if you are eating a lot of sugars, then you're going to inflammation, and that inflammation will again seal up airways.
So you're saying that me sucking on lemon drops at night when I go to sleep is not good?
Terrible idea. I'm glad you don't do it.
Yeah, I don't do it. I haven't had a lemon drop in.
We should make some lemon drops, some
20 years.
xylitol lemon drops.
Well, we will as soon as we get our cough drops made.
Those would be great.
Anyway, so you do want to make sure that your kids are sleeping well. I mean, I go in with my kids after they're asleep, and I know this sounds kind of creepy, but you go in, and if they're breathing through their mouth, you just go over there and pinch their lips together for a little while, and they'll go, and then they go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But they're sleeping with their mouth closed. I learned that from Trish O'Hare, and she told me that was something that people should do, especially when their kids are young.
Yeah.
And so I actually started doing that when my kids were probably 4 or 5.
And you can actually get specialized tape now that's made just for that, and not just for kids, but for adults as well.
Yeah.
That helps you keep your mouth closed while you're asleep.
I know, I just use duct tape, but it works. So
that's why you don't have any whiskers, like in this little spot right here.
I'm going back to all of this. We're talking about all of these things. Is it the right or the wrong approach to oral care? And what do you think about that? Is it the right one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, from a public health standpoint, right, what the public health officials are up against is they've got to come up with something that addresses the symptom for a huge range of kids from very different backgrounds. But I think that the next step is like saying, okay, look, we're addressing this symptom that really is an alert system to say something's wrong in the mouth, and we need to make sure that we're addressing that as well. We're not just kind of washing our hands of it saying, well, the problem's solved, they're not getting as many cavities. No, the problem's not solved. You've helped them keep their teeth, but
now they have all the systemic issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because the teeth are just one part of the mouth. The gums, the tongue, like all of those other are prone to infection and can be infected by the exact same thing that's causing the cavities in the teeth. And so just addressing the teeth isn't solving the problem. And then you're leading issues of like heart disease and
is it if we know that tooth decay is a bacterial infection of the mouth, just pulling all our teeth out and putting implants in isn't going to solve the problem.
Right.
We're still going to have all of the other issues. And, there are, you mentioned it, but there are all those systemic issues that come from having an unhealthy mouth. And we've did a whole podcast on this, that even the Surgeon General as long ago as 2000, so a quarter of a century ago, the Surgeon General was pointing out and saying that if your mouth isn't healthy, then there's no way your body is going to be healthy. And that's true. And just hiding that by, putting implants in or hiding it by putting sealants in isn't fixing the problem. It's masking it. So while I think that sealants and, all these other things are good things to do, it is stopping our public health agencies from actually addressing the problem. Right. And in order for them to address the problem, they have to look at ways that they can change the patterns and the habits, the behavioral habits and patterns of our population away from eating as much sugar, 6-carbon sugars, and utilizing more non-6-carbon sugars to get rid of those acid-creating bacteria. So you're actually treating the bacterial infection in your mouth and not just covering it up.
Yeah, because there is a difference between a clean mouth, right? So I've got the sealants, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm flossing, I'm going through all the mechanical stuff, which makes my mouth appear clean. There's a difference between a clean mouth and a healthy mouth. And a healthy mouth goes into the microbiome, your pH levels, like all of those things that incorporate, are you doing something that is keeping infection from happening in your mouth?
Yeah. Do you have a healthy mouth or a sick mouth?
Yeah. You can have a sick, clean mouth.
I know.
You want a clean, healthy mouth.
That is correct.
So, okay, so, you know, we've done a lot of the school shopping. You know, the kids were, my boys were really excited about getting their school drip, I think is the word, their drip. Yeah, it's your drip, the way you look.
I'm going to use that word today.
Yeah, they got their drip.
When I'm taking my daughter and all of her 13-year-old friends out to the lake this afternoon, I'm going to be like, you like my drip?
Yeah. They got to get the right drip to improve their riz.
I'm using those words.
So they got their drip. You got the classes all set up. You're weaning them off of the summer schedule and preparing them for the school set schedule. And the point is don't forget those healthy things, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I think I've done a decent job, other than, you know, my daughter does drink soda because she picked that habit up for me, is I pay for both of them to have a school lunch, and neither one of them really go in and eat it. They'll look at the menu each week, and then they'll come home and say, okay, yeah, this week they're having the pizza. Their pizza's gross, so we don't eat it. This day they're having chicken or fish, and they don't eat fish. I don't know. I don't eat fish, and so my kids don't like it, which is funny because they've never eaten it, so they don't know that they don't like it. I'm just like, why did you eat fish? And they said, Dad, I don't like fish. And I said, how do you know you don't like it? Try it. No. So I don't think my kids have ever actually eaten fish. But going back to that, they're actually conscious enough that you know, they are trying not to eat as much junk at school. Part of it is they know that I will embarrass them when they come home and say, yeah, Dad, my teacher was giving me gobstoppers and candy in class. And then I call their teacher up and I say, why are you giving my kids crack cocaine in school? I'm not. I'm giving them candy. I'm like, same thing.
An addictive substance.
Addictive substances. Anyways, you know, I think that we do need to pay attention to our kids. I think public health should be paying attention to the nutrition of what our kids are eating. I know that they've attempted over and over to work on school lunches. I think that Nancy Reagan did something with school lunches back in the day, and we didn't like it because she wanted vegetables and we wanted pizza.
Yeah. I don't know. Michelle Obama tried as well with the school lunches. And it's hard, right? It's hard enough at home to get my kids to eat, you know, what is a healthy meal, and when they're away from the parental guidance, and especially in a lot of these schools, they have soda machines and candy machines that they can go pillage, right? And so, I mean, I was guilty of it. In junior high school, I would go, instead of going to get lunch, I'd go buy a Dr. Pepper, and they had these Ninja Turtle pies, the Hostess Ninja Turtle pies, and it was like a pie with like a green custard in the middle of it, right? Well, so instead of eating this like vegetables and fruit and, you know, and some protein and stuff, it was like empty calories and a Diet Coke and a turtle pie.
Well, when I was in junior high, I didn't go to school. I think we've clarified that. But when I was in high school, I would get on my 10-speed bike. I was that kid. And I would ride it. This is actually so funny when I look back on it. It's so stupid. I can't believe how dumb I was. But I would get on my bike, and I would ride it probably 7 or 8 miles to go down to a specific gas station because their 32-ounce drinks were only 49 cents. And I could save from the 79 cents that they were at the gas station 2 blocks from the school.
I mean, yeah,
so to save a quarter, I rode all the way down.
So you could have soda more often.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think that's just it, is that like the mindset of kids is not to make those healthy long-term decisions. And so it's the responsibility of parents to help educate them and also understand that they're not going to follow it lockstep, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, that is true. And that is why it's important that public health does what they can to help us as we're doing that and our kids are in school.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm glad that they do have a sealant program, going back and bringing that both full circle. I'm glad that they have programs like that for schools because there are a lot of people that don't have access to that. But, you know, I think that they do need to up their ante and help us out some more because the health of our kids is not improving. It's deteriorating. And I think, we've been going on for so many decades now where the parents haven't been educated about what is,
Right.
what is good and what is right.
So help your kids breathe at night. Make sure that they're building a healthy mouth, not just a clean mouth. So looks like a fun school year.
Yep. I'm hoping that my kids have a good year.
Well,
I'm pretty sure they will.
Hopefully all the kids have a skibbity awesome year. Skibbity's a new cool word too.
Skibbity with my drip and my riz.
Skibbity with my drip and my riz.
And is slay still a word?
No, that word's gone. That was when we were younger.
I never used that word.
Slay?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well,
My
I guess
kids
you're older
use,
than I
my
am.
kids use that word. We were cool. So, anyways, we hope that everybody has that. I can't even think straight now because you're making me try to remember all my cool words. Anyway, so we hope all of those kids out there that are going back to school, that they go back, that they have a great school year, that they learn a lot, making up for lost time in the last couple of years when they weren't going to school, that they get to hang out with their friends, and that they have a healthy year while they're learning, and that we can provide them with the tools that they need to help keep their mouth and their body and their nose and their whole system healthy and functioning. And that's another session of Clear the Air. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
This episode was hosted by Nathan Jones, co-hosted by Shad Slaughter, produced by David Monk, associate producer Matthew Davis. Video and audio were edited by Caleb Scoresby, research by Saber Bills, graphics by Joseph Thornton, music by Augusto Diniz. If you enjoyed this episode of Clear the Air, be sure to follow, like, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest episode. Have a favorite episode? Share it with a friend or on social media. New episodes of Clear the Air are published weekly on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
So,
Speaking of Dr. Cannon.
I know. Speaking of Dr. Cannon, and his ears are burning, he starts calling me.
Oh, man, I had a thought on that.
What? Are you going to go into your beer voice?
Yeah. Shan, let's go grab a beer. Don't put that. Dr. Cannon will watch it, and he'll be on to me. That was my Dr. Cannon voice. Hey, Shan. Hey, Shan. Hey. Hey, he doesn't drink. He'll have a Coke. I'll have a beer.
Get him an O'Doul's. He'll have an O'Doul's.
I have no duels. Shan, this is really a good beer. Man, that did derail me. I had like this thought right at the end, and then...
Yeah.
Oh, talk about sugar.
I'll put this down here so you can see who's calling.
Yeah, good idea. Oh, he's calling me now. Man, I've been trying to get hold of Nate.